I'm Lucy.
And I'm Jennifer.
You're listening to Everything I Know About.
Each week, we share everything we know about a new topic, equipped with some internet research and a little too much exposure to pop culture. Today, we are talking about the year of the girl, 2023, and how everything was turned into girlified versions of itself. We had girl math, girl dinner, and I feel like I've seen so much discourse on TikTok and think pieces about even how the Barbie movie has influenced girlhood and how now everyone's talking about we were girls together and my girlhood back in the day and everything became girl. And I've now seen in 2024 discourse around if this is a bad cultural phenomenon, if we're infantilizing women by doing this, or if this is just a reclaiming of the feminizing energy around girlhood and making it something more lighthearted. And I had a lot of thoughts about this, and I haven't really talked about it in a cohesive way with somebody. So I wanted to deconstruct the girl with you today.
Yeah, I've seen it all over. I'm curious, you mentioned in 2024, you saw a shift in particular, that it was something negative.
People love to discourse on TikTok and be mini micro influencers and have a take. So this could be just a function of that. But I've seen a lot of people responding to girl dinner, for instance, with are we really romanticizing eating disorders and having 3 carrots for dinner? And I'm okay, that's a take. I don't agree, but okay, that's a take. You see corporations hopping onto the trend too. So I thought it was just really interesting how it became almost a marketing and corporatized thing. So it kind of took a turn where why are we girlifying everything? This has gone too far.
Yeah.
And then we also saw girl math come out. And at the beginning, it was kind of cute. Oh, I'm justifying the $300 purse purchase because it's $1 a day if I use it every single day throughout the year. And just kind of funny and silly. And then people were well, I can't do my taxes, girl math. And they're no, that's too far. That's not what we were talking about. Are we really perpetuating stereotypes that women can't do math? And it just gets very serious very quickly. The overall discourse, I think, has turned into why are we wanting to call ourselves girls instead of women? Why do we want to infantilize ourselves? Why do we want to gender everything?
I think people who are using this term, referring to themselves as girls or whatever, that girl, clean girl, identifying them in some sort of girl way, I think they are aware that this is a term that historically was used to describe children, and they're changing what that term actually means. Just with all language happens over time, they're reclaiming it. So I feel the take that women are not self-aware enough to know, and they're just being infantilized by society is kind of ridiculous.
Okay, thank you. I had the exact same feeling when I started seeing the discourse about infantilization happening. I was okay, ironically, you're the one infantilizing women for not having the ability to be in on the joke. Clearly these videos were made by people poking fun at, being sarcastic, and they were consumed by people who were in on the joke. And then all of a sudden, it gets in the hands of the academic feminism crowd who are do they not understand the context in which girlhood has been used historically? And I'm it's not that serious. And I think actually, it's a response to the heaviness that has been put on feminism, girlhood, womanhood, whatever you want to call it, that now we're making it something lighthearted and silly. To be a woman is not to be oppressed and constantly needing to push back on the patriarchy. That's such a heavy thing to put on us 24/7. And to just be able to find togetherness and community in something as silly as don't we all eat 17th century monks for dinner sometimes and call it girl dinner? How fun and silly is that? And then now it needs to be turned into something we need to espouse the virtues of feminism 24/7 and show how we're pushing against the patriarchy. Otherwise, we're not fighting against the man. It's that exact feeling that people are pushing against with girlhood. And so the pushback to me is so ironic.
Yeah. Even the term girl boss, which we just released an episode about girl bossing, but I feel that term, for example, didn't have this, oh, this is anti-feminist. If anything, it was oh, be a girl boss, you are being a feminist. And I think it's only because now we're referring to girl separated from boss and girl associated with these less power hungry things where now it's being looked at as a bad thing.
Yeah, but the girl boss also is a bad thing now. Didn't it kind of turn into you are a part of the patriarchy by being a girl boss? That even got twisted.
But I think when it first emerged, I didn't see the same pushback that I feel you're pointing out now, which is anything being referred to as girl is automatically being referred to as a child. I feel girl boss was never associated with being childlike.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. What you just said reminded me of the childlike thing. So Vox did a think piece about this. They were talking about girl in media and how back in the day, the OG was Golden Girls, right? We have Golden Girls and then we have the HBO show Girl, how everything has girl in it. And then it started to happen in books, or we have Gone Girl, Girl on the Train. Why the girl thing? Their take was that when you remove motherhood and wife and all of the nomers on a woman, you get girl. Basically, like it's just the woman before self-actualization, finding self-actualization. That is the girl. And so again, like kind of taking away all of the heaviness and just being able to exist is where girl comes from. And yes, that's like a very intellectual take on it. Absolutely. But I think there is some truth to that where it doesn't have to be this loaded term. Like, how do we say I'm a woman or like talk about womanhood in a way that doesn't come with all of the baggage? It feels like it became girl. If I were to be like, hey, we're girls, you're not going to be like, you're infantilizing me or you're saying I'm not mature or something. We don't take it that way.
Yeah. I mean, I saw this in some articles too, which is just people pointing out that like woman, it sounds sad, like woman dinner versus girl dinner, which sounds more fun. And I guess to me, the word girl, yes, it's associated with childhood. And I don't think that should be a bad thing. I think when people use the term, oh, you're infantilizing yourself or like society's infantilizing you, I don't know why they always tend to do it in such a gendered way when the reality is many people in society like childhood things. Like I think the obsession with Marvel superheroes and comic books and video games in the quote unquote boy world is a form of also, I mean, you can look at it negatively. You can be like, well, those are men who are infantilizing themselves by wanting to go to Comic-Con. But I feel like it's never seen that way. It's just seen that these people have a hobby.
Yeah.
Whereas when it comes to women liking quote unquote girly things, women liking pretty dresses or things that are typically associated with young girls, it's seen as, oh, you're like playing into the system because you're like not aware. Instead of it being like a genuine thing you're actually interested in, like a hobby you
100%.
have.
That's so funny that you say that because I always have this beef with sports in particular, how I feel like male interests are taken so seriously to the point that we have actual entire news outlets like ESPN dedicated to male interests. And like, it's totally fine that we have cultural phenomenon like the Super Bowl and like how big of a capitalist corporate marketing push that even is. But could you imagine if we had a similar news outlet for like the Real Housewives or Bravo TV shows, things that are women interests? Like they're seen as silly and stupid. And male interests are just taken so much more seriously.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I feel like Taylor Swift, as you brought up sports shows, it reminded me of Taylor Swift. Of course. Obviously, she's dating Travis Kelce. I don't know. I don't into sports at all, but I guess they just made it into the Super Bowl.
The fact that we know this, I'm not in sports at all either, but the fact that we know this is so...
Yeah, like the algorithm is serving it to me. But okay, so I like Taylor Swift. I guess I can't call myself a Swiftie because I'm not aware of all of the trends and like fandom that, you know, she inspires.
Yeah,
and,
the
like,
lore
everything.
is deep.
But yeah, and I do think like the fact that friendship bracelets are such a big part of her tour culture is fascinating because like friendship bracelets, I made those in summer camp. They were definitely a part of girlhood. There's definitely like nostalgia associated with those things. And the fact that women are taking this thing that little girls did and using it as a form of connection and community and bonding, I find to be really inspirational. And that was something that I definitely took away from this trend is I think girls is just a way to communicate to your community. It's a way to identify yourself as like a member of an in-group. And when you are making a TikTok video, like calling yourself a girl's girl or using that term girl, you are speaking to an audience that you hope will understand you. And I think you're not speaking to that audience of someone who wants to criticize and be like, you're self-infantilizing. And I actually found out just recently through doing this research that there's this online website called Girlhood that two like 17-year-olds in high school started. Have you heard of this?
No.
These are like two best friends. They met when they're 14. I can like vividly remember what it was like to have a best friend when I'm 14. They saw all of this girl discourse popping off on TikTok. They decided to start this forum where girls can submit anonymous questions to essentially like a big sister, quote unquote. And then they have older girls, older women who can apply to be like mentors. I mean, they have an application process, so they do screen who's giving advice, but essentially people can just post and be like, hey, I'm like struggling with making friends, or hey, I have a huge crush on this boy. Cute. Like, what do I do about it? And then an older girl will reply with advice, and then they publish it on this website. And I thought that was such a wholesome way of, again, I think reclaiming this term, making it about who we are as a community and like how we can support one another. There's something about girlhood. And even like when I think about girlhood, I think about friendship bracelets. I think about sleepovers. I think about telling your best friend secrets and girl code and all of these things that I think being an adult woman, you do feel more isolated. It's more lonely. You maybe have a partner or whatnot, but that's not the same as having a community of women surrounding you and supporting you.
Absolutely. womanhood has become so loaded with who even are women now? Are we stay-at-home moms? Are we working women? Like, what is our term? Like, how can we identify ourselves? And we have to have a new term that glues us together. And girl has been untouched. So it feels so pure. It's like when I say girl, you know what I mean. I know what you mean. Just like you said, there's like this new in group. And it's not even like gender essential. It's like I'm thinking of guys that can be one of the girls too. It does not have to be completely gendered at all. But it's just this feeling of camaraderie that you have that is this feminine energy camaraderie. It's even hard to put into words because it's just something that you intuitively, intellectually know when you hear girl or girlhood.
Yeah, totally. I think it's a great point that it doesn't actually have to be gendered. Similar to other really popular colloquialisms, the history of the word girl is actually in Black, transgender, and gay communities, where it was used even then to acknowledge a shared experience or express a subtle form of solidarity that only those in the know would recognize. And so, I mean, in some senses, I guess white women or women in general have co-opted that term to like refer to themselves. But I think it still has this really positive connotation amongst the in-group.
Yeah, absolutely. And so like for all of the positives that I think the rise of the girl had in 2023 and how I deeply believe that these things are funny, silly, good, I'm also finding myself having more like negative judgments about it, honestly, in the past year. And I think it's just because the never ending trend cycle, things just blow up so quickly and they become ubiquitous and then they kind of lose their meaning and then turn sour. And I think I'm starting to see that happen with the girl. So for instance, in January 2024, there was a video that went viral about a girl saying like, men are going to tell you that you don't have hobbies, but you do. Girls just have girl hobbies and they are going shopping, cooking, grocery shopping, chatting with your friends, going on a walk. People were responding to me like, we don't need to call just living a life girl hobbies. And like, that was actually kind of perpetuating negative female stereotypes. Oh, we don't actually have interests. Our interests are shopping and cooking. To that point, I was like, this poor girl obviously meant no harm with this video. She doesn't deserve all the flack. But at the same time, it doesn't have the same silly, sarcastic tone that we all know we're in on the joke. It was no longer a joke. I think she was being kind of serious. Oh, they're going to tell you don't spend your time in these ways, but you actually do. And it's like, that's not what we're talking about. Or girl math, where it became like, I have to call my dad to help me with my taxes. LOL, girl math. And we're like, that's also not what we were talking about. So I have seen it turn a little bit. And it's, I think, rightfully now getting some flack. We don't have to be stupid and call it being a girl. That's not what this was about ever.
Yeah. It's interesting that there's user-generated content in that vein, because I feel like for me, when I started souring on it was when I saw like big companies using the term to like sell more things to women. And I think just recognizing that part of the complexity of this term, yes, it can be a great thing, but it's also like we use girls as a marketing ploy.
100%.
I think it makes something more interesting to buy. I think that Vox article you referenced, it touches on this too, but I feel like maybe what that girl that you're talking about was trying to do was honestly blow up on TikTok.
Yes.
Because I do think people are realizing, oh, if I make the next quote unquote girl trend, that's like a path to fame. That's like marketing yourself, right? I've seen ads about girl math in particular because I think D2C companies were just like, oh my God, this is a gold mine. Girls are talking about girl math as if they're not actually spending any money. So if we use that in our ads, we're going to like brainwash them into thinking that we have such a good deal, such a good value.
Oh, and it's so cringe the second that it happens. You're like, get out of here. This isn't for you.
Yeah. So it feels like that's more of just the polluting force of the fact that anything that becomes popular, there's always people trying to monetize and trying to benefit themselves from it.
So true. Like, it's so funny that you say that because that's exactly what I was thinking too. I was like, this girl meant no harm, but she was trying to blow up. Like, she was trying to go viral with that, and she did, just not in the way that she thought she would. But yeah, like, you tack girl onto something and try to make it the new thing. And that has worked for, it seems like, the past almost year. To your point too, like these micro trends that just blow up and pop really quickly. There are so many iterations of the girl in the aesthetic sense right now, which is so tied to marketing and capitalism. Are you like in the TikTok aesthetic world? Do you follow it at all?
I'm not really on TikTok, but I am big into YouTube. And I feel like I've seen a lot of YouTubers I like do videos about these girl aesthetics that are emerging. That's what you mean, like tomato girl,
Yeah, tomato girl to me is so funny.
Soft girl, blueberry girl, vegetable.
I think tomato girl is the one where everyone was like, okay, seriously, are we doing this? But I've seen like espresso girl. But the thing is, they're so stupid because you're just wearing brown eyeshadow. Or tomato girl, you have a specific kind of blush and you're like a tomato girl. A lot of this is marketing and, I don't know, propelled by the consumerist machine. Also, I think it's interesting that people willingly participate and create these aesthetic trends. It's almost like we're all looking for a way to identify, and that social media has fragmented it so much that it's not so easy to categorize yourself and identify with a broader whole. I'm thinking back before mass social media when we were kids. You could either be preppy or punk or alternative. You had 4 different options, right? And it did feel comforting.
Yeah, literally the Mean Girls movie, you know, the musical just came out. And I feel like that's what I'm thinking. Those Mean Girl lunch tables, you know, the goths, the punks, the nerds.
But it was so easy to put yourself in a bucket. And especially when you're still figuring out who you are, it's so comforting to, even when you walk into a store, narrow down what clothing rack you're going to look at because this one actually fits your aesthetic. Like in this world where we have so much marketed to us, what fits who I am. That makes so much sense to me that you would want to identify yourself with an aesthetic. But as we become more fragmented, there's just so many to choose from. And I think people are looking for community in this. And it has turned into this marketing thing where now companies are trying to push different aesthetics. And with influencer culture, they are getting paid to push these aesthetics too. And be like, oh, well, now coastal grandma is out. Tomato girl is in. Now you need this new blush. It's sad, but it also hits on something that is so deeply universal in this growing up experience of wanting to identify with something and figure out who you are in the maze.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like why personality tests, I feel like, are so popular. Okay, if there's just like nerds, the goths, you're not going to confuse a goth for a nerd. But if you're just a girl and there's all of these facets of girlhood and you can be a blueberry girl in, I don't know, a blueberry girl in the summer and like a latte girl in the fall, I feel like it adds interest. It reminds me of BuzzFeed quizzes, honestly. When BuzzFeed was really popular and it'd be like, oh, what Jackson Pollock painting are you? Or like, what flavor of pizza are you? You know? It feels like, okay, this doesn't actually mean anything. It's just like whatever meaning you're attaching to it. I mean, I actually don't even know what a tomato girl is. Is that just like someone who wears a lot of blush?
It's like a makeup look. And I think people wear like a specific shade of red.
Oh, that's so interesting because I thought they were more like associated with also things you liked, not just like the visuals, you know? Like I thought it would be like, oh, I'm into cottagecore or gardening.
Oh, there definitely are. There definitely are.
Okay.
Clean girl, for instance, you're like, I drink matcha lattes and everything in my house is beige. And I have those like pom-pom fronds. Oh, you have some in the back of you. I'm seeing them. You're so clean, girl.
These? Oh,
no, but like the bigger, fluffier ones. Yours are quite subtle.
Okay.
But the one that like really hits with girl is the Coquette trend, the putting bows on everything. I was so confused by that when I felt like such a boomer. Like I was Googling, like, why are people putting bows on dumbbells? Have you seen the pictures of this?
No. Like dumbbells,
yeah,
literally.
Like they'll go to the
so
gym
funny.
and tie a pink ribbon on it and take a picture and be like, so girl or something like that.
That's amazing.
I know, and I was so confused by this. These videos would have like 1 million likes. And I'm like, what is going on here? I'm so confused. And it's the Coquette bow trend. But again, this uber feminine aesthetic.
There's all of these normal categories that we apply the girl label to. But then I think like the Coquette, what you're pointing out is there is a distinction around that category because I do feel like that is like distinctly more like childhood with the bows and the lace, things that little babies and little girls would wear. I know this is like a trend that's been blowing up. I read this article in the New York Times with Sandy Liang. Do you know that designer?
No.
She just did a really popular collaboration with Bagu.
Okay.
In this article where she was interviewed, she talked about how for her, adding bows and adding like these girlhood touches to her designs is basically a craving for like a time that she could never go back to, very tied up with nostalgia. And I think recognizing that, yes, there is a time in your life when you're a girl and there is a time when you're a woman. It doesn't mean that if I choose to label myself as girl, I'm not a woman. But I do think that term does harken back all of these ideas of childhood that we want to embrace. And I just did a little bit of research into like nostalgia because I feel like even with fashion trends, nostalgia is always, it's a driving force behind fashion, right? Like how trend cycles always repeat. Now like Y2K is really popular because millennials are getting older and they're like, I'm craving what I used to look like when I was like in my teenage years or whatnot.
Literally 2014 is trending, which is so sad. That was yesterday.
Yes. Yeah. I thought it was so interesting because nostalgia, I don't know how often you feel nostalgia. Like, what would you say?
All the time. I'm very nostalgic.
Really? Okay. I feel like I only notice it sometimes. And I was shocked because the research on this, most people report experiencing nostalgia at least once a week, and nearly half of people experience it 3 to 4 times a week.
Yeah.
Which I feel like, I mean,
No, I'm not surprised at all.
Like, if I were to sit here and think about my childhood and girlhood, like, I start to feel really nostalgic, but it's not something that automatically happens. But I do feel like women who are choosing to dress in this, like, really coquette way, part of it is definitely this desire to go back to simpler times. If really people are experiencing this 4 to 5 times a week, why not buy something that would help you feel that way, like, help you feel good? Because nostalgia definitely has, like, psychological benefits. People report that they feel a higher sense of belongingness, affiliation, and sociality. They describe their lives as more meaningful. And typically you start to feel nostalgia when you're lonely or when you're sad. And so I feel like obviously the rise of the term girl also coincided with the pandemic and like being at home. And I think especially with coquette fashion, I feel like that really blew up in 2020 with those fairy dresses and like puffy little baby doll dresses that were all over my For You page. I feel like people bought those things because they were sad at home. They wanted a place where they could just escape into their imagination.
Yeah. No, I totally see that. I've heard that take too, that coquette is actually a nostalgia for childhood. I can understand why that's a take, or like why this designer is explicitly stating they're using bows and frills because they're nostalgic for childhood. I get it. At the same time, is that really something that reminds you of childhood or would scratch that itch? I kind of push back on that a little bit because I'm like, were we all just wearing bows and frills when we were kids? Like, I don't really remember that.
Well, for me, childhood was definitely like limited to, and like I would sew little patches onto my jeans. I think colorful things. I feel like, yeah, the bows trend is maybe just one example, but I feel like there's a lot of designers now who are tapping into, like, I'll give you a recent example because I just bought these. It's winter in New York and I just bought those giant earmuffs.
Yeah.
I feel like those are so girl coded. Like, I mean, I feel a little bit ridiculous, honestly, wearing them because I'm like, I feel like a rabbit. Like, this is definitely like, you know, something I would have been into when I was like,
but that's
15.
like kind of the point. I think they're great.
Right, exactly.
No, I totally get that. See, I think I'm thinking about like the bows and hyperfeminization of everything as a way of bringing some like levity and joy to things that are kind of more dull and masculine.
Yeah, exactly. Like the gym example.
The gym example. Or like when people do like little coquette decorations on the inside of their car or their water bottle. I don't see that as a nostalgia so much as I'm like celebrating feminine energy in a way.
Yeah, no. I think that resonates. I guess the other part of all of this wanting to look like a girl thing that we haven't touched on yet is also like looking younger and the obsession with anti-aging.
Yeah.
Which I think is tangential to this girl stuff, but I feel like it's come up a lot lately because have you seen the news about these Sephora preteens?
Oh, have I? Yes. It's all over.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't actually run into a Sephora preteen.
I did.
Was it scary?
Yes.
Were you terrified?
It like brought up some past trauma. I felt like the uncool girl at the lunch table or something because they look at you like, what the fuck are you doing here? Like they give you this like, or at least in my experience, it's only happened twice. I don't know why I'm saying they as if I'm like speaking for a whole generation. But my 2 experiences were like these little girls were in Sephora. They were probably like 10 to 12. I was trying to get Rio de Janeiro, like, you know, that brand that they all love. Yeah. I was like, okay, what's the hype with this? I want to sniff it. But they would push me out of the way and try to get the little bottles. And I was like, whoa. And you could tell that they were just looking at me like, oh, you old person. You know how you would kind of have a little bit of a disdain? Like I totally did too for the older people, like, oh, you're not cool. Yeah. I felt like the other end of that finally. It's probably just karma coming around. But I was like, oh my God, this is so insane. And I'm also like, where are you getting the money for this? My parents would have never given me that kind of like Sephora money at the age of 12.
$50 like per
Absolutely
thing.
not.
Yeah, I mean, when I look back at all the crap that I bought when I was in high school, because I don't know, when you're a teenager or you're preteen and you're just like told to buy things by marketing, you're just so susceptible to it because you just like crave fitting in and you're insecure and you like want all these things. And literally when I go visit home and I'm like in my childhood bedroom, I'm throwing away piles and piles of crap of glittery bracelets and glittery hair ties and like ugly nail polish and like all this stuff I bought. And I'm like, dang, well, at least then those things were worth like $2. Now it's like girls are buying like Drunk Elephant because the packaging is aesthetic. So it like looks nice in their room. And those are like $50 to $100.
That one
per
is
bottle
crazy. I don't get the Drunk Elephant thing too because they're not even, the packaging isn't that cute. I think it's maybe just the name, like Drunk Elephant is alluring somehow, but like the packaging isn't anything spectacular. I think like the glow recipe one is interesting. That is actually really cute packaging, but it does kind of feel adolescent in a way because it's all like the pastel colors and it's fruit and it has cute names.
Yeah, and like this obsession with staying a girl forever. I think, yes, part of the buying skincare is just to participate in the community, even if you like don't need the products.
Yeah.
But I do think part of it is also still people who don't need the products, like getting actual baby Botox and like getting actual anti-aging treatments that they don't yet need because they're like terrified to leave this era of girlhood and become a woman and like all of the responsibility and I guess wrinkles.
I question how much of it is they're terrified of getting wrinkles and stuff too. I do remember when I was a kid, I had this thought where I was like, okay, I don't have acne yet, but if I just wash my face every day with anti-acne wash, I'll never get it. And then like if I put anti-wrinkle cream on my face when I'm 10, I will never get wrinkles. So like your kid brain does kind of think like that. So I'm wondering if that's what it is or if it's just they're inundated with all of this influencer content. So it's not actually about the result. It's just participating in influencer culture.
I know, but like even why are you thinking about wrinkles at all when you're 10? I didn't think about wrinkles. I feel like people are thinking about it because all of the social media, right? And like the fact that everyone is face tuned and looks flawless and nobody ages anymore. People always write articles about how J-Lo or Beyonce look fabulous and they're like in their 40s or in their 50s. And that's part of their appeal. I feel like when I was growing up, yeah, of course I was buying things to fit in, but I also didn't fear aging nearly as much as I think. Even I feel it now because I am aging. I feel like the young women who are like 20s and feeling the pressure to like, I mean, Botox is expensive. Like spend the money to like really make sure they don't age. There was this article that just came out in the New York Times. If you can't tell, I like subscribe. So I get a lot of my news from there, unfortunately. There was this article about why is Gen Z obsessed with quote unquote aging like milk. It's this big trend that's come up. And I'm like, dude, the oldest Gen Z person is 27. So you don't have any wrinkles yet when you're 27. Like,
well, what were they saying in the article?
It was all of these like Gen Z people being like, why are we aging so poorly? It's because we're under all of this stress and like the pandemic and everything going wrong in the world. And we look worse than like even millennials do who are like actually older than us. And there have been all these videos of women posting videos of themselves being like, how old do you think I am? And they're like actually like 23. And then people are like responding, you look 30 or whatnot. And then they're like getting really upset.
Yeah, no, I've seen this too. I think it's actually kind of true. It's not that they're aging.
You were like, yes, you are. You're spoiling. Like,
okay. Let me clarify. Not spoiling like milk, but Gen Z does look older. Like I can't differentiate a 20-year-old from like I'm 29. They look my age. I can't tell.
Yeah. There are those also these funny videos where it's like people our age, like millennials, being like, oh, when I was 14, this is what I look like.
Yes.
And it looks like a normal, preteen. And then it's like now 14-year-olds, they're like wearing makeup. They're wearing like fashionable clothes. They like look done up in that way.
Yeah. So I honestly think this is actually just being on the internet. This actually goes back to like the skincare thing too. There is not a separate stage of life anymore for being a young girl. You go straight from being an actual child to a fully formed adult, young adult. Like there isn't any more like the awkward teenage years or like the awkward early 20s. We didn't look put together, or at least I didn't. I didn't look super put together and my makeup perfectly done when I was 21 years old. But these girls are.
Yeah. No.
These girls are, and like the 12-year-olds are immediately going into the 25-year-old mode, putting on essences and serums and stuff because that middle ground has completely disappeared. And I really do think this is just a function of social media and influencer culture. It's like there are no like child influencers. Like everyone is just being influenced by 25-year-olds. So everyone kind of looks 25.
Yeah. And that's like super negative. I feel like the only appropriate age as a woman you can be is 25. Like literally between the ages of 14 and 40, you should just be 25. You should look like you're 25 and you haven't aged during that entire period. Real. And it's so harmful and unrealistic because, I don't know, this is such an old person thing to say, but like I really don't know what is going to happen to these young people. How toxic to like grow up in that way.
I mean, if we're all having this sort of nostalgia for girlhood, imagine them who like literally don't have girlhood. They are skipping girlhood. It's so sad. Those are such precious years. And did you just be spending it at Sephora, like slathering on retinol when you're 8 years old? No. Yeah. They're going to be aging like milk.
Yeah. Like, I mean, when they're actually 30, like, what are they going to harken back to? There will be nothing. There will be no bows. There will be no lace.
I was thinking about that. Now we like have nostalgia for like the light brights, you know? And like you were talking about in our creativity episode, the Etch-a-Sketch thing, the what is it called?
The Magnadoodle.
Yeah, they're going to be reminiscing about like Rio de Janeiro. Okay, I keep on saying Rio de Janeiro. That's not the name of this brand. That's the city. No, it's called Fuck, what is it called?
Sol de Janeiro.
Thank you. Wow. Yeah. Sol de Janeiro. They're going to be like reminiscing about that. Oh, do you remember like going to Sephora together? Like, that's so sad.
Or they're just going to have like when they're all turning 20s, 30s, they'll just like have a huge rebellion phase where it's like, then they go through their girlhood era.
Honestly, I'm for it.
They become like Disney adults, you know?
That actually sounds really fun. I would love to go through a second girlhood. Hopefully they just like cling to their Stanley cups and have a little drunk elephant, and that's that's their nostalgia.
Oh God. I think my take overall is I'm like a big supporter. I like using terms like hot girl walk and like girl dinner or whatever. It makes celebrations out of little things that I would normally do in my life. Like when I'm too lazy to cook, it's nice to give it a justification or like tie it to a bigger community. And instead of just me being lazy and not willing to cook, now I'm like participating with what other women are doing. I think that sense of being in the in-group is very comforting, and we can see through when people are trying to co-opt the girl term for their own benefit. But I think when it is naturally occurring and a term finds resonance with a whole bunch of women, why not adopt it? Why not celebrate it? I feel like it's just a really fun way to, not take life so seriously.
I couldn't agree more. I feel almost exactly the same way. I think it's like a really endearing, cute trend that's come up. And I love hanging with the girlies. I love being a girl's girl. Like all of that stuff is so fun. And to have the language for that in a way that everyone recognizes is amazing. And I also feel like trying to have too much discourse, like I know we're literally engaging in discourse about it right now. So like I'm like going against this, but like having like too much serious discourse about it is completely besides the point. There are going to be people that are co-opting it for their own purposes, whether that be marketing or like claiming that it's anti-feminist or something, but you understand that it's not supposed to be taken seriously. And that's the entire point. It's actually a very empowering and together term that does make us feel closer as women, which I think is incredibly important and something that we all miss, clearly.
Yeah, hopefully the girlies are listening to us and they like our content.
Well, if the girlies are around, give us a rating and subscribe. We would love to have you stick around.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoy the pod, we would love for you to give us a follow and rate us on Apple Podcasts, which helps us get the word out and reach new listeners. Full transcripts and show notes are available on Patreon, where if you choose to become a patron, you'll also get access to bonus content, our monthly book club, and our eternal gratitude.
If you'd like to get in touch or suggest a topic for a future episode, email us at everythingiknowaboutpod@gmail.com or DM us across all socials at EikaPod, that's EIKA pod. Thanks for listening and see you next week.